You know the story, right? A big, promising new education reform gets announced, and then, well, it kind of just fizzles out, and nothing really changes. It's this super frustrating cycle. So why? Why do so many of these well-intentioned policies just fail? Let's dig in.
Okay, so this is the big puzzle we're tackling today, and it's a question that drives parents, teachers, and, policymakers absolutely crazy. We're always trying to improve our schools, but the results, they almost never live up to the hype. So what are we getting so wrong?
Well, a lot of the time, the answer comes down to a really simple but powerful idea borrowed from medicine. Think about it. To solve any problem, you first need the right diagnosis, right? You got to figure out what's actually wrong. And then you need the right treatment, the perfect solution for that specific diagnosis. If you mess up either one of those steps, your policy is pretty much doomed from the start.
Okay, so let's tackle that first absolutely crucial step, the diagnosis. This whole part is about how we even define the problem we're trying to fix. And believe me, it is not as straightforward as you might think.
So here's what's so fascinating about this. A policy problem isn't some objective fact just sitting out there waiting for us to find it, like the law of gravity. Nope. It's a situation that we, as a society, decide is a problem. It all comes down to interpretation, our values, and what we choose to shine a spotlight on.
All right, let's make this real with a classic example pretty much everyone's heard of. Picture this. The headlines are everywhere, all screaming that student test scores are dropping. Okay, so we can all agree that's not great. It's unsatisfactory. But what exactly is the problem we're looking at here?
Is it the curriculum? Maybe the stuff we're teaching is just outdated or not challenging enough. If that's the case, well, you'd rewrite the textbooks, right? Or hang on, maybe it's a teacher quality problem. Are teachers getting the best training? Do they have the support they need in the classroom? If that's the diagnosis, then the treatment is totally different. We're talking more professional development, maybe new certification rules.
But what if the real issue is socioeconomic inequality? I mean, maybe students from tougher backgrounds just don't have the resources to keep up. That would mean the problem isn't even inside the school at all, and that points to a whole other universe of solutions.
And finally, couldn't it be the test itself? What if the assessment system is just broken, and it's not measuring what kids are actually learning? See what I mean? The way you frame the problem completely changes the solution you're going to chase.
And this isn't just a theory. Take a look at this real-world case from Malaysia. It's a perfect example. For years, they diagnosed their problem as needing to measure student achievement with these huge, high-stakes exams, but then they completely reframed it. They realized the problem wasn't about measurement. It was about the incredible pressure and stress those exams were putting on kids. And once they changed the diagnosis, boom, they switched to a completely different treatment, school-based assessments.
All right, so let's say you've nailed the diagnosis. You know exactly what the problem is. Fantastic. But now you need the right treatment. And that brings us to part 2. What's in the policymaker's toolbox? What can they actually do to fix things?
Basically, policymakers have a toolbox with 4 main kinds of tools they can pull out. First up, you've got regulatory tools. These are your rules and standards, like teacher certification requirements. Then there are financial tools. We're talking money, right? Grants and incentives to encourage certain behaviors. Third are institutional tools, which change the whole structure, like creating a brand new education agency. And finally, you've got informational tools, using data, like publishing school rankings, to let people know what's going on.
Now, the real secret here isn't just picking one of these tools. The magic is in using the right combination for the specific problem you've diagnosed and for your country's unique situation. Let's look at how a couple of top-performing countries pull this off.
So check this out. 2 totally different paths to the same goal, excellence. On one hand, you have Finland. They go for a light touch. They use way fewer regulations. Their main tools are institutional. They focus on building an absolutely world-class teacher education system and then just trusting those amazing professionals to do their jobs. But then you look at Singapore and South Korea. They take a much more hands-on approach. They use powerful regulatory tools like a strong national curriculum, and they combine that with institutional and informational tools like superstructured career paths for teachers and constant data-driven checkups. The craziest part? Both approaches work. They just use a completely different set of tools.
Okay, to really see what it looks like when the diagnosis and the treatment line up perfectly, we've got to zoom in on Singapore. It's just a fantastic case study in how to be strategic about all this.
What's so brilliant about Singapore's approach is how they layer all these tools together. It's like a recipe. First, they use powerful institutional tools to recruit and train the absolute best teachers and school leaders. Then they lay down a clear regulatory tool, the national curriculum. But, and this is key, they still give schools freedom to innovate. And finally, they use informational tools to constantly check in, see what's working, and make adjustments. It's not just a bunch of separate policies, it's a single, coherent, interconnected system.
And really, this quote just nails it. The magic isn't about finding one single silver bullet policy. It's about the slow, careful, deliberate work of aligning everything: your goals, the structure of your system, and the specific tools you pick to get the job done.
So, after all that, what are the big things to remember? Let's break it down. First, education problems aren't just found, they are defined. Second, how you frame that problem totally determines the solution you'll end up with. Third, remember that policymakers have that 4-part toolbox. And finally, and most importantly, real, effective reform happens when you align the right problem with the right tools.
And that leaves us with one final thought. A challenge for you, really. The next time you hear about some new education debate, or you see a headline about a big new policy, I want you to stop and use this framework. Ask yourself 2 simple questions. 1, what problem are we really trying to solve here? And 2, are the tools they're proposing the right ones for that specific job? I promise, if you do that, the whole conversation will suddenly become a lot clearer.